That's really nice to meet you guys all here, and welcome to our presentation. Just let me introduce my group members. They're Holly, Candy, Edward, Oliver, and me, Joy. We are really appreciate to share our results with you guys all, which name the difference between Japan and Australia and the perspective of international business in the following 5 parts. Let's have a whole look about these 5 parts. Firstly, the globalization influenced the political economic of Japan. Secondly, which is more important, economic development or humanistic construction. The third part is the different culture of Australia and Japan. And then, absolute advantage and the comparative advantage. At the end of all is the trend policy investment that the Japanese government currently employs. After having a whole look about these 5 parts, let's get started. May I invite all of you to think about one question. What is economic? In 430 to 355 BC, the ancient Greek scholar Xenophon explained the word economy in his book on economics for the first time. In the 17th century, a French economist first mentioned the concept of the political economic. And then, the Japanese decided to use the word economy to explain what economic is in the 19th century. Now, we have 2 options that we can discuss: economics and the political economics. The former one focuses on studying the extent of nature economy and discussing household management. And the latter one focuses on economic problem of whole country or social. Show us the effects of the globalization. The price of daily necessity has fell sharply as a result of the significant increase in import. However, it is clearly that decrease in export and increase in import contribute the decline of the employment in Japan. Despite the foreign employment, Japanese economy has been in good shape for years. Japan productions are still popular around this world. After COVID-19 opened up, Fuji, Tokyo, and other Japanese automobiles are attractive to travelers, and the country's tourism economy is blowing up again. By comparing the social system of Japan and Australia, that we can notice these 2 countries are both under the market economic, and both of these 2 countries are democratic countries. Unlike Australia, which has an individualistic system with common law, Japan has a collective country with the civil law. Although the law systems are different, but Japan and Australia, they are both influenced by the laws of Britain and America. Japanese civil law has a long tradition of absorbing and digesting foreign influence. The history of Australian common law extends the doctrine of joint office is short. In Japanese civil law, judge needs to have the more explicit laws and regulation to decide the final results. However, the common law in Australia is based the judgment of previous case, and the decision results is made after the tiny adjustment based of physical truth. In the case John v. the Queen, if it's played under the Japanese law, the judge must be follow the law rule and the regulations. That's enough for my sharing. Let's welcome Holly to share her idea of the next part. Thank you guys.
Hi everyone, I'm Holly and I'm here to give the next presentation. When we measure the development of a country, we usually use some data and indicators to help us. The data we are looking at here are GNI and HDI. Let me start by explaining what GNI and HDI are. GNI is gross national income, which is the total dollar value of all goods produced by a country's residents, and the income received by the country's residents. Include including property income and employee appreciation. The advantage of GNI is that it is easier to track and compare the economic performance of different countries over time. And the GNI is also the most widely used amplification of a country's economic replication. But GNI does not consider income inequality, so it may not actually reflect a country's actual income situation. And GNI does not consider non-cash contributions to the economic, such as uplab or volunteer work. So compared to GNI, HDI consider other important factors beyond economic growth, such as health, education, and life expectancy. It provides a more comprehensive picture of a country's well-being than a single figure like GNI. Next, let's look at Australia's GNI and HDI. Australia's GNI data was reported at 635,798,000 in December 2022. This records an increase from the previous number of 583,023,000 for September 2022. This tells us that Australia's economic is growing. The increase in GNI indicates that Australia is producing more money, which leads to an increase in economic activity. This could be due to an increase in the exports, business investment, and consumer spending. This is a positive sign for the Australian economic and suggests that economic growth is likely to continue soon. HDI data for Australia from 1980 to 2021. During this period, the average for Australia was 0.907, with a low of 0.841 points in 1980 and a high of 0.951 points in 2021. The last value of 2021 is 0.951 points. As a comparison, the world average based on 186 countries in 2021 is 0.721 points. This tells us that Australia has a higher level of human development than the global average. It also shows that Australia has made significant improvements in human development over the last 40 years. This can be attributed to increased access to education, healthcare, and other factors that contribute to human development. So with these two set of data, we can see that Australia's economic is getting better and people are living happy. Next, we'll look at how GNI and HDI are calculated. GNI is equal to GDP plus C minus D. The formula tells us that gross national income is equal to gross domestic product plus the difference between exports and imports. It calculates the income in economic terms. The calculation of the Human Development Index involves several steps of formula. It begins with the calculation of the index value, life expectancy index, and education index. According to our previous study, we learned that the disadvantage of GNI is that it does not consider income equality. This means that even if a country's GNI is on upward trend, it does not mean that its HDI is also on upward trend. And the Human Development Index is very adaptively defined by the economic terms as a statistical tool used to measure a country's overall social and economic achievements. So trying to measure a country's development, HDI is more convenient than GNI. Thank you. And the next part will be presented by our team member.
Hi everyone, I'm Candy, and today we are going to talking about the cultural difference between Australia and Japan. Hofstede's theory provides insights into different cultural dimensions and compares countries based on these 6 dimensions, which are power distance, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty avoidance, long-term orientation, and indulgence. Australia has a highly individualistic culture. As a result, society is loosely knit with an emphasis on self-reliance and taking care of one's immediate family. In the business world, employees are expected to display initiative and be self-sufficient. In contrast to more collectivistic societies like China and North Korea, the extended family system is not prevalent in Japan. Traditionally, Japan has been a paternalistic society where family names and assets were passed down from fathers to the eldest son. Despite this, Japan is often perceived as collectivistic by Western standards and individualistic by Asian standards, due to its reserved and private culture compared to many other Asian nations. Australia has a cultural inclination towards individualism, personal freedom, and a more relaxed approach to uncertainty. This cultural value system promotes openness to change, risk-taking, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty. In contrast, Japan is one of the most uncertainty-avoiding countries on the earth. It is commonly believed that Japan's frequent exposure to nature disasters such as earthquakes, tsunamis, typhoons, and volcano eruptions has led its people to become well prepared for unforeseen circumstances. In terms of cultural norms, individuals in Australia place a great emphasis on discovering the absolute truth. They value traditions highly, don't typically save extensively for the future, and prioritize achieving swift outcomes. The culture of Japan is known for having a strong focus on long-term goals. This is evident in the business sector, where companies prioritize steady growth and investment even during challenging economic conditions, and market share to ensure long-term stability and success. And next is Ronan Shanker's cultural clusters. It provides a framework for comparing countries based on their cultural similarities and differences. These clusters are based on factors such as language, religion, historical background, and geographic proximity. An Anglo cluster is represented by countries like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom. This cluster is characterized by focus on achievement, competitiveness, and personal freedom. On the other hand, the Confucian Asia cluster, which includes Japan, South Korea, and China. Confucian values harmony and long-term orientation are important aspects of this cluster. Based on Ronan and Shanker's culture clusters, Japan and Australia belong to different clusters, indicating a significant cultural distance between them. Japan's Confucian influence and emphasis on hierarchy and group harmony and distinct from the individualistic and low power distance value of the Anglo cluster, including Australia. When considering if the cultures of Japan and Australia are becoming more similar or disparate, it is crucial to recognize the impact of globalization, internationalization, and cultural exchange. Globalization has led to increased interactions and the diffusion of cultural elements across countries. As a result, there might be certain aspects of convergence between Japan and Australia, such as the adoption of Western business practice, exposure to global media, and the influence of international trends. Considering Ronan and Shanker's cultural clusters and Hofstede's theory, it is evident that Japan and Australia belong to different cultural groups, indicating a significant cultural distance. This implies that there cultural values, communication styles, and societal norms and are distinct from each other.
Now I'm going to introduce the fourth part about the assignment. Absolute advantage is an economic concept that describes a scenario where a country, region, or individual can manufacture a particular product or service with greater efficiencies and effectiveness than another. In other words, the producer with an absolute advantage can create more of the product or service using fewer resources or produce the same amount using the same resources. The idea of absolute advantage is significant in global trade because it permits nations to concentrate on manufacturing goods and services that they can produce more efficiently than others. This strategy allows them to trade with another country and acquire goods and services where they are like an absolute advantage. The outcome of this practice is an improvement in effectiveness, decreased price, and enhanced economic progress for all countries that participate in the trade. The term comparative advantage in economics describes a scenario where a country, region, or individual can produce a specific good or service with a lower opportunity cost compared to another producer. Opportunity cost is the price paid for foregoing an alternative option to pursue a particular course of actions. In simple words, comparative advantage means that it's more cost-effective to produce a particular good or service for a producer compared to another producer. The importance of the comparative advantage concept in international trade lies in the ability to clarify where countries trade with one another, especially if one country has an absolute advantage in producing all goods. Specializing in the production of goods in which they have a comparative advantage can aid countries in improving their standard of living and profiting for trade gains. In summary, countries can benefit from trade by concentrating on producing goods where they have a comparative advantage. In this case, we choose Japanese manufacturing. Suppose the industry has an absolute advantage to operate. Japan's car manufacturing industry is recognized for relying on absolute advantage in their production process. The country has a remarkable absolute advantage in car manufacturing resulting from advanced technology, skill, labor force, and efficient production system. Japanese car manufacturers can deliver high-quality car at a lower cost, using fewer resources and less time than their competitors. The Japanese car manufacturers have been able to use their absolute advantage to decrease their production costs, enable them to provide at a reasonable price in the international market. As a result, Japan has emerged as a top exporter of cars globally. Additionally, Japan's car manufacturing industry has a reputation for innovation and technological advancement, which enables it to produce eco-friendly and efficient cars. While having an absolute advantage in a car industry can be beneficial, there are potential drawbacks to relying solely on it without taking advantage of comparative advantage. For instance, if Japan solely depends on its absolute advantage in car industry, it might not be encouraged to diversify its production and could miss out on the opportunities to produce other goods that it could produce more efficiently than other countries. This could result in limiting the country's potential for international trade and economic growth. Additionally, having an absolute advantage in industry could make a country susceptible to external factors such as technological advancements or shifting in customer demand. In the event that a new technology emerges that allows other countries to produce cars more efficiently, Japan's absolute advantage in car manufacturing could become less significant. In general, Japan's car manufacturing industry has flourished due to its absolute advantage, resulting in a competitive and robust sector that enjoys economies of scales and produce affordable, high-quality vehicles. This has resulted in a surge in global demand for Japanese cars, boosting Japanese economic growth and creating job openings with the industry. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Oliver. Thank you for Edward's part. Now I'll come to my part. First of all, I would like to introduce what trade policy tools the Japanese government has adopted at present. For the first page, including tariffs, import bans and restrictions, and trade agreements. This time I'll introduce the three main ones. The first one is tariff. Tariffs are taxes and fees levied on imported goods. Specific tariffs vary from commodity to commodity to control the amount of imports and protect domestic industries. Take cars as an example. The Japanese government imposed high tariff on imported cars, which increased the price of imported commodities and increased the competitiveness of domestic industries like Toyota. In terms of trade with Australia, Japan has imposed restrictions on some agricultural products. For example, there are relatively high tariffs on Australian beef, which limit the import of Australian beef in the Japanese market. This is also to keep Japanese beef competitive at home, as both countries are famous for Wagyu beef. For the next page, the second point is import license, including import bans and restrictions. A large part of imported products do not need import license and can be freely traded to Japan, but some products need import license. Japan bans things like guns, fake money, and other products that violate intellectual property laws, because some imported goods are considered to have a negative impact on Japanese public safety and economy. Those imported products must meet the restrictions required by the relevant laws of Japan, and must meet the inspection requirement and meet the necessary condition to obtain import license or approval. For the third page, trade agreement. The Japanese government actively promote the signing of bilateral and multilateral trade agreement to promote trade liberalization and market opening. In the Japan-Australian trade agreements, which is Japan-Australian Economic Partnership Agreement. This agreement, which came into force in 2015, aims to promote trade and economic cooperation between Japan and Australia. The agreement covers agricultural product, industrial product, service, investment, and other fields. It reduces tariffs and trade barriers between two sides, promotes development of bilateral trade, expanding export market, and improves the competitiveness of foreign trade. For example, Australian imports Japanese car brand, which is Toyota. For the last page, which is the trade agreement, the Japanese government actively promote the signing of bilateral and multilateral trade agreement to promote trade liberalization and market opening. In the Japan-Australian trade agreements, which is Japan-Australian Economic Partnership Agreement. This agreement, which came into force in 2015, aims to promote trade and economic cooperation between Japan and Australia. The agreement covers agricultural product, industrial product, service, investment, and other fields. It reduces tariffs and trade barriers between two sides, promotes development of bilateral trade, expanding export market, and improves the competitiveness of foreign trade. For example, Australian imports Japanese car brand, which is Toyota. For the last page, which is the second question, which international trade theory is supported by the use of this trade policy instrument? According to my understanding of those trade policy tools of Japan, trade protectionism is the international trade theory used by Japan, because the Japanese government used those trade policy tools mainly for the purpose of protecting domestic industries and maintaining domestic economy stability. This is related to protectionism and the protectionism view of trade theory. And let me tell you a little bit about protectionism. Protectionism is the idea that restricting imports and protecting domestic industries. You can improve your products by competitiveness while protecting jobs at home and ensuring the stability of your domestic market. The previous trade policies, whether tariff or import license, the aim is to raise the cost, make product compete with domestic products in price, and also encourage consumers to choose domestic products to prevent the competitiveness impact from importing countries. So the next page is our reference, and that'll be the end of our presentation. And thank you for watching.